Can I solve Desperate Housewives before the reveal? What happened to Mary Alice? That is the mystery to be solved in the show Desperate Housewives. So if you know anything about this channel, you know that there is a major question laying right here on the table. Can I solve Desperate Housewives before the reveal? So that's what I'm going to do. This is not a recap of Desperate Housewives. This is me watching the show for the very first time and trying to solve the big mystery before it's revealed. So after every 3 or 4 episodes that I watch, I'm going to jump in here and break down the different suspects, theories, and clues that I have for who I think did it. And every time I come in here, I will lock in a prediction. I will lock in a guess for who I think killed Mary Alice. That way, at the end of the video, when we figure out what happened to her, we can look back and see exactly how close or how far I was from getting it correct. So with all of that out of the way, let's jump into the first episode of Desperate Housewives and find out if I can solve Desperate Housewives before the reveal.
The whole neighborhood is talking, and the rumors are true.
You want to do it on the table this time?
I can walk down the street and hold my head high.
Can't believe he tried to kill me.
Yes, well, I feel badly about that. Do you think you could stop by later tonight and take a look at my pipes?
Desperate Housewives premieres Sunday, October 3rd at 9/8 Central, only on ABC.
All right, squad, before we jump into this, I do want to give a quick trigger warning because this show does deal with death and suicide. All right, I just watched episode 1 of Desperate Housewives, and let me just say I'm already hooked. When I first watched the pilot episode of like Pretty Little Liars, for instance, when I did my video on Pretty Little Liars last year, I got like 10 minutes in and I was like, oh no, I've made a huge mistake. But the pilot episode of Desperate Housewives rules. Okay, so the big mystery of the show is what happened to Mary Alice. She is the narrator of the show, and the episode begins with her talking about how great her life is. It's boring, it's simple. She is the perfect suburban housewife. And then she kills herself. And the question for all of the characters immediately is why? Why would she do this? Or did she even do it to herself? Could someone else have killed her? Well, we don't get a ton of answers in the first episode, duh. But we do get enough to start coming up with some theories and point out some suspects. But before we start talking about theories, let's break down the different characters that we meet in this episode, which is a lot. We've met a lot of characters already. First up is Lynette. Lynette used to be a corporate woman who was just tough as nails and kicking ass. And now she's still tough as nails. She's still kicking ass. It's just different ass. She's kicking her millions of children's ass. Not literally. She is a stay-at-home mom with her gaggle of misbehaved children. And then there is Gabrielle. She is a former model who married rich. That's this business guy. He's an asshole. He sucks. Then there is Bree. Bree is the perfect person. Everything she does is perfect. She cooks delicious cuisines. Every hair is perfectly in place. She does it all, but we learn very quickly that she's perfect in the kind of obnoxious, know-it-all way. Very mean girl vibes. And then we meet Susan. Her husband left her for his secretary. So she is a single mom, and she's very quickly becoming my favorite character for reasons we'll get into in a little bit. And those are our main characters. These ladies, Gabrielle, Lynette, Susan, and Bree, they are the main characters, and they were best friends and neighbors with Mary Alice. Now, outside of the main characters, we meet a lot of other characters, mostly the families of our main characters. Like Gabrielle's husband, Carlos. We've already talked about him. He sucks. He only cares about money, doesn't seem to care about his wife at all. He's like, as long as she does exactly what I tell her to do, we're good. Gabrielle is also sleeping with her very young gardener, John. Now, I don't know how young he is, but in the episode, it is brought up that he's not old enough to buy cigarettes, which now you have to be 21. But back in 2004, when the show came out, you only had to be 18 to buy cigarettes. So He's under 18. Very problematic. But it's also a very cliche kind of like rich housewife trope. You know, the classic, like, oh, the hot mom sleeping with the pool boy. Except in this show, she's not sleeping with the pool boy. She's sleeping with the gardener, John. A funny thing, like a wacky thing that happens in this episode with Gabrielle is Carlos is upset with John, not because he's sleeping with his wife, but because he didn't do a very good job on the lawn. And it's because he wasn't cutting the lawn. And so to keep her husband from firing John, she like leaves this important dinner party, runs home, cuts the grass herself. And then when they get home from the party, he's like, oh, the grass is fine. I must have been tripping. It was just dark outside. We meet Lynette's husband, Tom, shortly into this episode. He actually seems like a pretty good dude. All the other husbands in this show suck tremendously. But, you know, this guy shows up from his work trip, immediately helps distract their thousands of children. So that way him and his wife, Lynette, can, you know, do it. This does end poorly for him, though. He doesn't want to use protection, and so Lynette punches him in the face, which was very funny. This show is great. Then we meet, this is Bree, and this is her husband, Rex. This is where things get so funny and crazy and weird. Bree's husband, Rex, is tired of his wife being perfect. She's so detergent commercial perfect. He misses when she wasn't perfect, when she would laugh, not this cold, perfect thing. Her kids also seem sick of her. Like they ask for regular food for dinner instead of a cuisine. They're like, you're always making us 5-star dinners, Mom. Why can't we just get like pizza or something? Basically, this culminates with her husband, Rex, telling her that he wants a divorce. Then, right after that, she gets up in the restaurant that they're at to go make him a salad at the salad bar, in which she accidentally puts onions in it. This usually isn't that big of a deal, except for the fact that her husband Rex is deadly allergic to onions. And he almost dies. They have to go to the hospital. So then he's all like, you tried to kill me because I was going to divorce you. And she was like, dude, I promise it was an accident. I got distracted. You know, I got distracted by the salad bar. You got to believe me. This was an accident. He does seem to believe her. And you know what? Honestly, I kind of believe her too. Now, I'm not sure yet. You know, I've only seen the one episode. But I'm going to trust this woman. Then there's Susan. Now, Susan did have a husband. Her husband left her for his secretary. So now she is a single mom to the daughter, Julie, who we meet. Susan's main storyline in this episode is that she has a new love interest. She has met Mike. Mike is renting a house on the street and they hit it off immediately. Susan wants to ask him out, but there's only one obstacle in her way. Edie, her other neighbor. She's in like a competition with Edie to see who can ask out Mike first. Now, Edie's whole thing is that she is well known by the men in the neighborhood, if you catch my drift. The show calls her a certain word that I'm not going to say, but it starts with S, ends with T. I'm not going to say it. There is an L in there, though, but I'm not going to say it because I do not slut shame. Ah, fuck. Now, Susan and Edie are competing for Mike's attention, and it ends in tragedy. Kind of. Edie has a man over at her house. Marvin Gaye is blasting. Candles are lit. Susan thinks that Mike is the guy in there with Edie. So she panics and she breaks into Edie's house, dude. While she's in there, she accidentally knocks over some candles, sets the curtains on fire. The whole house burns down, dude. She did not do it on purpose. That is important. It is very much a Mr. Bean type scenario. She is just a wacky lady who accidentally burned down her neighbor's house and ran away before she could get blamed for it. However, we do find out that it was not Mike who was sleeping with Edie at the time of the house being burnt down. So there's still hope for Susan and Mike until we learn something else about old Mikey boy. We see Mike on the phone with somebody. We don't know who it is. And on the phone, he's like, I don't have any information yet, but I'm getting close. And then he pulls out a gun. I think that this implies that he's like an undercover cop or something like that. He's here to investigate what happened to Mary Alice, much like myself. But it could be something darker, because what we learn about Mary Alice and her family is very, very intriguing. Let's just jump right into that. This is Paul. Paul is Mary Alice's husband. We meet Paul and we meet their son, his and Mary Alice. She's the dead one. Their son, Zach. But what's really important is we get a few moments with this Paul guy. And these moments really heat the show up. The first moment is Paul just kind of staring awkwardly, mysteriously at the pool in his backyard during the, what's it called, a funeral, but after the funeral when they're all at the house, the wake, at the wake. And Mary Alice, who, remember, even though she's dead, she is the narrator of the show. So in this moment, when we see her husband staring at the pool in their backyard, Mary Alice says, Paul has things beneath the surface. Then later on in the episode, their son, Zach, wakes up in the middle of the night and he hears a noise that he hasn't heard in years, since he was very young. The noise of a family secret. That's what Mary Alice says in the narration. I don't know if you could tell I was quoting the show because I looked at the teleprompter. He goes outside because he woke up in the middle of the night. He heard a noise. He goes outside. It's a familiar noise from when he was very young. He goes outside and he sees his dad, Paul, digging up the swimming pool. This is not an above ground pool, ladies and gentlemen. This is a concrete pool. This is a very nice neighborhood. Basically, what I'm trying to say is that they have something hidden underneath their concrete pool. And if you know anything about TV dramas, which I think you do, I'm assuming that whatever is hidden underneath their concrete pool is connected to what happened to Mary Alice. Which brings me to the biggest moment of the first episode. The ladies of Wisteria Lane, that's the street that our main characters live on, Wisteria Lane. They are helping get rid of some of Mary Alice's things, so that way Paul and Zach doesn't have to go through all that right after losing their wife and mother. And while going through her things and unloading it, getting it in the car, taking it away, they find a letter. And this is what the letter says. The letter says, I know what you did. It makes me sick. I'm going to tell. And the date on the letter that was addressed to Mary Alice was the exact same day that she died. Whew! We have got a mystery on our hands, ladies and gentlemen. So let's break it down. Right off the bat, I'm feeling as of this moment that Mary Alice did take her own life. At the moment, I don't think someone else killed her. It really feels like maybe she thought that she didn't have a choice, because Mary Alice herself, as the narrator of the show, says, I never wanted you to be burdened by this, as her friends find the letter. So the four main characters open this letter. They're like, oh my God, what happened? And then Mary Alice, the narrator, is like, I never wanted you to be burdened by this. So I think what that means is Mary Alice did something. The most obvious thing that someone would do and then be like, oh God, I don't want anybody to know about this, is murder someone. I don't know. But whatever she did, the evidence is probably buried under their concrete pool. And it does seem like her husband, Paul, and her son, Zach, are at least in the know about it, or at least knew that there was something under the pool, the concrete pool. Like maybe it was the kind of thing where she was like, hey, if anything ever happens to me, I've hidden something under the concrete pool. You're going to have to use some real manpower with like a pickaxe, like we're in Minecraft or some shit, break up the concrete at the bottom of this pool, and there's something hidden there. Or maybe they are in on it, because I don't know. If someone was like, hey, Chase, don't be concerned. No worries. But if something happens to me, we all got to die one day, right? If something happens to me, I need you to go to my house with a sledgehammer and break up my concrete pool. I have something buried under there, and I need you to take care of it. I'm going to go, well, first of all, I don't know what this person has done, but apparently they've done something. So I'm going to play it safe. I'm going to say, okay, yeah, no doubt, man. Hey, Of course, that's what I'm here for. I'll help you hide a dead body if you need to. We're best friends. And then I will move away and they will never see or hear from me again. They're going to have to ask someone else to deal with that. That's not for me, dude. Regardless, whether her son and husband know about what she did, she has done something. And it seems like someone has found out whatever this terrible thing that she did. They sent her a letter saying, I know what you did and I'm going to tell. And Mary Alice decided that the best course of action was to no longer be around. Because I am assuming that whatever it is that she did is bad enough that if it got out, that it would destroy not just her life, but her whole family's life and her friends, because she said that she didn't want her friends to ever be burdened by this. So what did she do is question number one. Who wrote this letter to her? Basically, the point of this video is I'm trying to solve what happened to Mary Alice. And since as of right now, it seems like she took her own life, whoever sent this letter to her is the one responsible for her death. If the person who sent her this letter never sent the letter, Mary Alice would probably still be alive. Which means that what I'm going to be locking in for this section is who I think sent the letter. And that will be, who I think killed Mary Alice. So, who do I think sent that letter? Is that English? I think it is. Well, let's break down the suspects, shall we? I have a cigarette. I have a cigarette. Because that's what private detectives, they always have cigarettes. Like in the Maltese Falcon. So, who are our suspects for who killed Mary Alice by sending that letter? Could it perhaps be one of her 4 best friends who sent her that letter? I mean, we do see that Bree almost kills her husband Rex by putting onions in his salad. Now, I'm sure that was an accident. But what if it wasn't an accident? What if her cold, calculated perfection is actually more of like a Patrick Bateman American Psycho type coldness and perfection? She's a stone cold killer, baby. Maybe she found out whatever it is that her friend Mary Alice did and wanted to blackmail her. Not to mention, we do get a throwaway line that Bree is a part of the NRA. For those of you who don't know what that is, it is the National Rifle Association. Interesting. Very interesting. But what about Susan? I mean, Susan's so nice. She's so lovable. But we did watch her burn down her neighbor's house. Again, accident, sure. But what if it wasn't? Then there's this guy, Mike. And apparently he's either like an undercover cop or an FBI agent. But what if it's more malicious than that? What if he's like a part of the mafia or he's a mercenary? And what if he is actually here to collect whatever is buried underneath that concrete pool? Again, people, this is not a kiddie pool. This is not an inflatable pool. This isn't an above ground pool with the poles and the vinyl. This is a concrete pool. Realistically, until we figure out whatever it is that Mary Alice did, it's going to be pretty difficult to narrow down suspects for who sent that letter. Because right now, it could be anyone. I know what you did. It makes me sick. Did she kill someone? I feel like maybe that's just a little bit too obvious for a show like this. I mean, there's so much chaos going on in this show to be like, yeah, Mary Alice killed someone. I'm not so sure that that's a big enough secret to die over keeping. I mean, sure, it's obviously a big deal because she doesn't want to go to jail or whatever, but it's like, is it that big? I just don't know. I realized that by saying that, I kind of made it sound like I didn't think killing someone was a big deal. And then I was trying to backtrack. And then I was like, I'm just making this worse. I can already see it. People just being like, Chase Bridges says it's okay to kill one person as long as you're a rich housewife. Now, I'm a creative guy. I could sit here and come up with a million ideas of why she did what she did, what's buried under her pool. I could come up with a million ideas. Easy. From the simple, like dead body, to the extreme. What if she poached a koala bear in Australia or something? And she didn't want anybody to find out about it because that's very illegal and very wrong. Probably. I actually don't know that. But I do have a theory. And I think that this theory is pretty grounded in clues. And I don't know, I just think it's very realistic instead of me just coming up with what could she have possibly done. There is a character that I have not brought up yet. This character's name is Mrs. Huber. Mrs. Huber is the one who found Mary Alice's dead body. She shows up all throughout this episode, and she talks to the different main ladies at various points throughout. all for different reasons. Like, she's the one that tells Susan that Edie is having a man over for late night activities, playing a little Jenga, if you know what I mean. She lets Lynette know that her boys, those terrible, terrible boys, are playing in the pool of Mary Alice and Paul's pool during the wake. She talks to Bree at the salad bar. She was the one that was distracting Bree and caused Bree to put the onions in the salad, almost killing her husband. She's just like that classic nosy neighbor type. Very common trope. And that's like the first thing we learn in this entire episode. The first person we meet is Mary Alice. The second person we meet is Mrs. Huber. And it's her being nosy. She hears a strange sound, and so she walks over to Mary Alice's house to see what the noise was. And she doesn't like go up to the front of the house. No, she sneaks around the back and peers through the window. And then, of course, she does see Mary Alice's dead body. So, you know, yeah, it was important. I mean, it's a good thing that she went, is what I'm saying. So it wasn't like her son who found her. That'd be devastating. But what if it wasn't a gunshot that she heard? She didn't know that's what that was. But so why was her first course of action when she hears a weird noise next door to sneak around the back of their house and look through their windows? I genuinely believe that Mrs. Huber is the prime suspect for someone who would have seen something that they weren't supposed to. And she just like gives off the vibes of like, if she did see something that she wasn't supposed to, she's definitely the kind of person that would send a letter being like, I saw something I wasn't supposed to. And now, and this is where my theory gets really good. I think that Mary Alice sent that letter. I think that Mrs. Huber sent that letter to Mary Alice, but it was about something else. Let me elaborate. I think that Mary Alice did something like sleep with the gardener boy, John, like how Gabrielle is. Or maybe she slept with like Bree's husband, Rex. Something like that. Something very common on this street. Something very, you know, rich people being bizarre behavior. Just something kind of scandalous that would have caused a big issue for Mary Alice between all of her neighbors. You know what I mean? Just something like that. So she sends the letter to Mary Alice being like, I know what you did. It makes me sick, you know, that you're sleeping with this young boy or you slept with someone's husband. It makes me sick. I'm telling. Mary Alice sees this note, this letter, and thinks it's about the very dark, very, very dark secret that her and her family are hiding. And because the letter is so vague, it's just saying, I know what you did. It makes me sick. I'm telling. Mary Alice doesn't realize that it's about something silly, something stupid. She thinks it's about the worst thing ever, the super big secret that she's got hiding underneath her pool. Again, it's a concrete pool. She thinks that the letter is about the bigger secret than it is, takes herself out. And that is what the big reveal is going to be. The big reveal and kind of the irony is that Mary Alice had no reason to take such a drastic measure because that letter that she received from Mrs. Huber wasn't actually about the thing that she thought it was, whether it's she killed someone or whatever. Her actual secret is still safe, but she panicked. Whew. I'm going to be real with you guys. I think I've nailed it. I mean, just from like a story structure standpoint, which is like when you're writing a murder mystery or a whodunit, you need to introduce the person who done it so quickly, as soon as possible. And I think it's very interesting that they introduced us to Mrs. Huber before we got lost in the weeds of the storylines of the main characters. So the fact that we met this side character immediately means that she's probably very important. I think I've nailed it, guys. But there is still a lot at play here. Like, why is Mike on the phone with some person being like, I'm getting close to some information? And then, of course, there's the question of why Mary Alice's husband, Paul, was digging up the concrete pool. Like, what is this deep, dark secret that Mary Alice and Paul and their son have? We have no idea yet, but I'm excited to find out. I have locked in my suspect and theory, which is Mrs. Huber. For everything I just said, I think she sent the letter. So let's go watch the next few episodes and see if we can learn any more information.
How much do we really want to know about our neighbors?
Tomorrow on an all-new Desperate Housewives.
Come on. Out the window. Hi, honey, you're home early.
Did you want to have dinner with me?
Just the two of us?
Kids are jumping up and down. We have to find a way to control them.
You saying I'm a bad mother?
I'm gonna have to ask you to step back, ma'am.
We gotta find out what was going on.
An all-new Desperate Housewives. Tomorrow at 9/8 Central.
All right, let's get serious. I just watched episodes 2, 3, 4, and 5. We are into this season, dude. I don't even know where to begin because we learn so much information. One thing is for certain, though, and that is the fact that I am super suspicious of Mrs. Huber. However, as she becomes more and more suspicious, I do get a little bit worried that she could just be a red herring. She does have red hair. If you're a long-time viewer of my channel, then you know that a red herring is my kryptonite. Now, if you don't know what a red herring is a storytelling device used in mysteries, used to mislead the audience away from the actual reveal. So while we're all distracted by this very obvious suspect over here, the real killer is hiding in the background. So, as it relates to this situation, we're looking at Mrs. Huber and we're going, she is so suspicious. Meanwhile, the real killer is someone that we haven't even really brought up that much. And on my channel, I get caught up in that a lot. There will be a suspect that I think is just way too suspicious. They have to be a red herring, and I don't lock them in as the person. And then it turns out that it is that person, and I totally fumbled it. I could have gotten it right, but I was playing 8D chess when the show was playing ping pong. So I'm going to try and not do that this time. My suspicion of Mrs. Huber, I'm going to stay locked in on that. I'm going to keep my eyes peeled on the Huber, mostly because she does a lot of suspicious stuff in this batch of episodes. Let's just jump right into that. Here is a list of all of the suspicious things that she did in this batch of episodes. The biggest thing that happens with Mrs. Huber is, I think, the most damning thing about her, or against her case, if you will. She is helping Edie, whose house just got burnt down by Susan, and they are sifting through the remains of the house, seeing if they can find anything that survived the fire. And Mrs. Huber finds a measuring cup. Now, this is the same measuring cup. I don't think I brought it up in the last section about episode 1, but Susan, as she ran away from the burning down house so that she didn't get in trouble for burning down this lady's house, she dropped the measuring cup that she had in her hand. Mrs. Huber finds this measuring cup in the remains of Edie's house. And now Edie, she doesn't find it suspicious at all, but Mrs. Huber does think it's very suspicious. She thinks it's even more suspicious when later on she goes to Susan's house and Susan's daughter says something about how they lost the measuring cup. So Mrs. Huber, she's a smart lady, puts 2 and 2 together. Susan burnt down Edie's house. And when she figures this out, she goes and confronts Susan immediately. And she even makes like this weird comment about how the phrase, I'll make mincemeat out of you. She talks about that phrase, I'll make mincemeat about you. And then she's basically like, what that saying means nowadays is that I'll chop you up into little bits. And then she's straight up like, yeah, I know you burnt down your neighbor Edie's house because you wanted Mike for yourself and you thought Edie was competition for you getting Mike. Dude, Mrs. Huber starts blackmailing Susan. She's like, hey, Susan, I'm going to go tell Edie that you burnt down her house and I can prove it because I have the measuring cup. Unless Susan does what Mrs. Huber says. Huber. Am I saying that right? And of course, this does kind of start off passive aggressive. Miss Huber isn't just like all up in her face about it. At first, she's just like, oh, she's behind her in line at the grocery store. And she's like, oh, my groceries. And then Susan's like, yeah, her groceries are on my tab. Ring them up. And then Miss Huber goes to Susan. She's like, oh, I need $600 to fix my water heater. Any idea where I can get $600 from? But this blackmailing does not continue for very long because Susan and her daughter Julie manage to sneak into Mrs. Huber's house and steal back the measuring cup, meaning that Mrs. Huber doesn't have any evidence to prove that Susan burnt down that house. But what this really means for us is that Mrs. Huber, in all of her snooping, which is a lot, for example, Lynette gets pulled over by a cop in one of these episodes. Mrs. Huber is nowhere to be seen in that scene. But then later on in that same episode, she walks up to Lynette and she goes, "Oh, I saw you got pulled over." She's always watching. And when she got dirt on someone, which was Susan, she got dirt on Susan, she immediately used that information to try to blackmail her. And the fact that she does this blackmailing so easily implies to me that this isn't her first time doing it. She very well could have been the person who sent that letter to Mary Alice. In fact, there's no doubt in my mind that she's the one that wrote that letter. But I do also still believe in my theory from episode 1, where I talked about episode 1, last part, where I think that what she wrote the note about is not actually the deep, dark secret that Mary Alice thought that the note was about. It's about some little thing that Miss Huber thought she could blackmail Mary Alice about. I think the more I watch this show, the thing that maybe she wrote the note about initially, that Mrs. Huber wrote the note about, was that Mary Alice slept with someone's husband. But the note was very vague. Mary Alice thought it was about the deep, dark secret that she has, made an assumption. But, and I know I said I was going to try to avoid this, it feels so blatant that she wrote this note that I wonder if Mrs. Huber is just a red herring. So even though I don't want to doubt myself and end up looking dumb when I should have stuck to my guns like I always do, I would be dumb to not look at other possible suspects and theories, just in case my Mrs. Huber theory is very wrong. Especially because we have some very suspicious characters in this batch of episodes. Like Mike, and like Mike 2, Streetball. We haven't been able to pin down Mike's whole deal. Is he a cop? Is he a part of the mafia? I don't know, but he's something. Regardless of what he is or who he is working for, he's got some sort of secret. He's got something to hide. In episode 2, we meet his dog, which is like a German Shepherd, which I was like, that's a cop dog. This dude's a cop. And then at the end of episode 2, we see that Mike has a gun, some cash, and a map of the whole street with like detailed notes about each person that lives in each house. So that information means that, it's still within the realm of possibility that he's just an undercover cop or agent or something. But then a break-in happens in one of the houses in the neighborhood. It sets up this whole neighborhood watch thing. Everyone's on patrol. And it's made very clear to us, the audience, that the person who broke into this house is Mike. And when he finds out that he accidentally left a screwdriver in the house that he broke into with his fingerprints on it, he thinks he's screwed. He's like, I'm busted. I gotta get out of here. And so he meets up with this dude on a park bench. And so he tells this guy, who I guess is like his boss or something, he's like, dude, I'm caught. I gotta get out. And his boss is like, no. Hold tight. You can leave if you actually get caught for this. And basically what ends up happening is the cops don't take the whole screwdriver thing seriously. And so they don't even run it for prints. Mike gets off scot-free. Mike is still in the neighborhood, and it's very clear to us that he has got something going on. He's watching everyone. He's trying to get information about everybody. And what's very interesting is a line that he says to his boss guy when they're talking on the bench. He says, I think we might be wrong. I don't think anyone here is what we're looking for. And then the boss is like, one of them might be. So yeah, basically what I'm saying is Mike is hella suspicious. That kind of sounded like Obama. Mike is hella suspicious. If I'm being completely honest, I do not think that Mike is who we're looking for. We're trying to solve the mystery of what happened to Mary Alice. And it kind of seems like Mike is also trying to solve the mystery of what happened to Mary Alice. So maybe he's investigating her death, or he is a criminal and he's trying to cover up something or figure out some other situation that might be connected to Mary Alice. I really have no idea. But it's safe to assume that anything that happens that's kind of weird or suspicious is most likely connected to Mary Alice. Because do you guys remember when I talked about how Mary Alice and her husband Paul had something buried under their pool? We do start to kind of figure out what that is. Which leads me to my next suspect, which is Paul, Mary Alice's husband. A lot happens in these episodes with Paul. We figure out what he dug out from the pool. It's like a big wooden kid's toy box, like a toy chest, probably about this big, maybe a little bigger. And we see him load up this box into his car and he hauls it off. He throws it into a lake. He thinks it's over with. Then later on, we, the audience, see the box floating Back to the surface of the lake, somebody finds it. The cops are called. And then later on the news, we overhear them talking about a wooden crate that was found by the police and that might be filled with human remains. I mean, right off the bat, I'm like, okay, Mary Alice killed someone and they buried the body underneath the concrete pool. Seems like a straightforward theory. Seems like a straightforward thing. And it only gets weirder and weirder, right? Because first we find out about this, there might be human remains in it. Next thing you know, Paul has put the house up for sale. He's trying to get the fuck out of there. And while this is all happening, we're seeing him deal with issues with his son, Zach, which, we'll talk about him in a minute. He's got his own set of issues. Back to Paul, the ladies, our main characters, decide they're going to go tell Paul about this letter that they found. Remember, it's the note that we think, we being me, and then I'm lumping you in it because this is a journey that we're taking together. The note that's like, I know what you did, it made me sick, I'm telling. The ladies found that note, they decided to finally tell Paul about it. Paul freaks out, starts crying, runs away. Later, he shows back up and he's like, hey, I'm sorry about that. This is just, really hard for me and my family. Mary Alice wrote that note to herself. And I'm like, what? Dude, basically what he says is Mary Alice was very sick and she was writing letters like this one to herself all the time. Basically what Paul is trying to insinuate to the ladies is that Mary Alice had like schizophrenia or some sort of disorder. She was struggling to figure out what was real and what was not real. And the only reason I bring up the word schizophrenia is because that's the word that the ladies use, because they're like, wait, is that even possible? Could she have been schizophrenic? And then very quickly, they're like, this motherfucker's lying. But then they have also learned something else about Mary Alice in this batch of episodes that makes them go, well, maybe she did have something. Because Bree was at her therapist's office and she was trying to steal her husband's tape. They're going to therapy for relationship issues instead of just divorcing right away. And so Bree was going to steal her husband's tape so that way she could hear his secrets. But then she sees Mary Alice's tape. And so she takes that tape. And they listen to this tape, all four of them together, the main characters. And Mary Alice is talking and she says that her real name is Angela. So now I've got a million theories, right? Was she in the witness protection program? Does she have some sort of mental illness that causes her to give herself multiple names? And then back to Paul, everyone can hear him and his son Zach arguing and yelling all the time. And basically what the show's kind of insinuating is that Paul is being abusive to his son and hitting his son. But then at the end of episode 5, we see that Zach, he's the one laying hands on his dad. He knocks his dad down. So this kid definitely has something going on. Let's break this down. Things start to get strange when Zach finds his mother's gun, the same gun that was used. And so he's just playing around with it in the living room waiting for his dad to get home. His dad walks in the door and he's like, hey, why'd you keep this? And Paul is like, well, because we might need it someday for protection. And then he's like, Zach, you need to take your medication. And what is very important to remember is through episodes 2 to 5, it is strongly set up by the show that Zach, the son, is a victim. But then by the end of episode 5, there's kind of this reveal that Zach is not the victim. Zach might be the one that is abusive. Like we even get moments where the four main ladies are like, that Paul guy, he's always giving me the creeps. I've never liked that guy. And then you hear screaming at their house and they're like, that poor boy. It's just stuff like that. And it kind of makes it seem like Paul is like the big red herring for this batch of episodes. And then Zach starts getting really close with Bree. Not in the way that Gabrielle is close with John. Like a very maternal relationship with Zach. And he tells Bree, I know why my mom killed herself. It was something I did. Something bad. But then he panics and he's like, I shouldn't have told you that, and he leaves. Now this makes me wonder. The human remains that were in the box hidden underneath the pool. At first I was like, okay, so Mary Alice killed someone. But now Zach's talking about how he did something. And that's why his mom died. So then I'm like, okay, so did Zach kill somebody and then they cover it up for him? Like, what is happening? It's getting wilder by the episode. I mean, that almost makes more sense. Because then it's like, Zach killed someone. Mary Alice and Paul covered it up. Someone sends a note to Mary Alice saying, I know what you did. Mary Alice then panics, takes her own life, maybe her thought process was, if I'm dead, then Paul can just tell everyone that she's the one that killed that person. And then that way Zach gets off scot-free? I don't know. Because then Zach breaks into Bree's house and decorates her whole house with his family's Christmas stuff. It's just very eerie, unnerving. The cops show up. And when you combine that information with the fact that we saw him knock his dad out and he's supposed to be on some sort of medication, it makes me think that he is very important to this whole thing. And then I'm thinking about all of the different storylines that we're getting, right? I think about Mike and what he's doing here. What is he looking for? What is he, if he's an undercover cop, what is he investigating? If he's a criminal, what is he trying to figure out? And then we have this crate of human remains that apparently Zach did. So then I'm like, okay, well, maybe Mike isn't a mafia person or a secret agent or whatever. Maybe he's a relative of the person who was killed and put in the crate. But then that doesn't even make any sense because we saw Mike talking to like his boss on the bench. And so, but like, you know, but I do think that there's something to that train of thought because it's like, okay, maybe Zach killed another kid in the neighborhood when he was really little. And that kid is Mike's son or something. It's just like, there's human remains in the crate, right? So we know that someone is dead. And then I'm like, okay, well, has anyone talked about someone being dead? And the only thing that I can think of is that Mike said that his wife died. So he's a widower. And that's why, you know, he's available for Susan to try to date. And so I'm like, okay, well, maybe he's trying to figure out who killed his wife, right? But I just don't understand. Like, I feel like the neighbors would know him or something. At one point, Bree mentioned that she was married to a different man before her and Rex got engaged. So then I was like, well, maybe she kind of implies that she left him for Rex. But what if he died? And maybe that's who the human remains are in the crate. If we can figure out whose human remains are in the crate, we can start figuring out suspects and what's happening here. Yeah, other things that I feel like I should bring up from these episodes. Gabrielle keeps almost getting caught by Carlos, her husband, with her affair with the gardener, John. He is a teenage boy, just so we're clear. That makes her a predator. She is sleeping with and manipulating a teenage boy. And while that storyline seems to be kept separate from the main mystery storyline that's happening, it's got to be there for a reason. I think the show is saying, hey, look, Gabrielle is not a good person. She is committing a crime in front of our very eyes. And I think that maybe that is a setup for later on where it's like, I don't know. Because that's what's so interesting about the show at this point is we're seeing so much of the four main characters, but all of the mystery stuff that's happening is happening separately from them. So like eventually I feel like they're going to have to get involved in the mystery in a big way. And could that big way be that one of them is the person who sent the letter? One of them is the one that killed Mary Alice potentially? I just don't know. And then Carlos thinks Gabrielle's cheating on him, right? Which she is. He doesn't know who though. So he brings his mom. She brings his mom into town and she's staying with them. And like basically her job is to watch Gabrielle, make sure she's not cheating or anything like that. And Gabrielle kind of insinuates, Carlos's mom kind of insinuates to Gabrielle that she murdered her husband to protect her son Carlos. And that she would kill anyone to protect her son Carlos. Basically saying that she will kill Gabrielle. It's pretty wild stuff happening. But Gabrielle is not the only character that might be a very bad person and could potentially be the killer, right? Bree also has some issues. She manages to convince her husband Rex to not file for divorce yet and for them to just go to couples counseling. And it's throughout this counseling that we learn that she's not totally well. Like her husband is sleeping downstairs on the pull-out couch instead of up in the bed with her. And so every night she's like pulling the springs up from the pull-up bed so that it's like stabbing him in the back. So that way he'll get so uncomfortable, he'll have to come get back in bed. And then later on at a dinner party in front of all of their friends, Rex lets slip to everyone that they're in counseling. And that makes her extremely angry. So she tells everyone in attendance that Rex cries after sex. It's very funny, but it makes things worse, obviously. It just seems like she has a hard time being a normal person. We brought up the comparison earlier in this video about a Patrick Bateman American Psycho type thing. And I think that very well could be the case. Plus, we do learn in this batch of episodes that she has 4 guns. So that's 2 more guns than 2 Chainz has chains. Then there's Lynette, who has done absolutely nothing to make me suspect her. She's got her hands full with her kids, who are, by the way, so funny. At one point, her kids paint a girl blue at school. And then at one point, Lynette has had enough of her kids, kicks them out of her car on the side of the road, and she's going to like pull around the side. She wants them to think that they've been abandoned, and then she's going to turn around and come get them. But then by that point, some lady saw it and grabbed her kids and was like, "You're a terrible mother." But then her kids beat up that woman, and they're like, "Don't you ever say bad things about our mom." It's very wholesome, very funny stuff. I don't see how it pertains to the mystery at hand. Same with Susan. Susan's main storyline here, it kind of feels like she's actually the main character of most episodes. It's all about her relationship or potential relationship with Mike. And one thing that I love about Susan is that she's just Mr. Bean. Everything that she does goes wrong in the funniest way possible. She almost kills Mike's dog because she's wearing earrings and the dog chews the earring, gets stuck in his throat. We already talked about how she burnt down Edie's house. She also at one point gets locked out of her own house while she's naked, and then while trying to get back in the house, falls into some bushes, and Mike walks up and he's like, "Everything okay?" And she's like, "Yeah." We also learn about Susan's relationship with her ex-husband. He's an asshole. At the end of episode 5, Susan and Mike kiss. So that's kind of like the romance plot that's happening. And it doesn't really tie anything at all to do with the main mystery other than the fact that Mike is a mysterious character. So with all of that stuff talked about, I think the only thing really left for this section is for me to lock in my prediction on what happened to Mary Alice. Last time we locked in that we thought Mrs. Huber sent the note about something else, not the big dark secret, but Mary Alice thought it was about the big dark secret and took her life. I still feel like Mrs. Huber sent that note, but I'm beginning to wonder with how quickly that kind of storyline is happening. Like, you know, we're only a few episodes into this season. There's like 23 episodes in this season. And with the pace of the mystery happening episode to episode, I wonder if this actually goes way deeper than we realize. Maybe that note doesn't even have anything to do with her death. Maybe she was actually murdered. Apparently, her son Zach did something bad. There's a crate of human remains that was buried under her pool. Mike's stalking the neighborhood and trying to find out information about everybody. Mrs. Huber is a blackmailer. There's just so many elements at play. So what I'm going to lock in as my prediction for this section is that Mrs. Huber sent the note, and in doing so, accidentally caused Mary Alice to take her life. That big secret that she has is whatever her son Zach did, which is, I'm assuming, killed someone who is in the crate. Right now, my theory is that he killed another kid in the neighborhood, or maybe his sibling. Maybe they had more than one kid. Regardless of whatever the big secret is, I am locking in the fact that Mrs. Huber sent that note and through the chain of events caused Mary Alice's death. So let's go watch the next few episodes and see if we can learn any more information. This show is awesome. This show is awesome.
Next Sunday on an all-new Desperate Housewives.
The idea of a sexual surrogate came up. She would coach us.
So she would be in the room with us while we make love?
Speaking of Zach, haven't seen him around lately.
I sent him to stay with relatives.
We have to find him. It's the only way we'll know the truth.
Why haven't you returned any of my phone calls?
Maybe we should just cool it for a while.
I have everything under control.
An all-new Desperate Housewives next Sunday, 9, 8 Central. Plus an encore of tonight's show this Saturday, 10, 9 Central, only on ABC.
We are off to an amazing start. I just watched episodes 6, 7, 8, and 9. And guess what, motherfuckers? We found out who sent the letter to Mary Alice. That's right, baby. That's right. I'll walk you guys through it the same way it was revealed to me in the show. So that way you guys can feel the same emotions that I was feeling as it was going down. A few episodes back, Paul, who is Mary Alice's husband, he hired a private investigator to find out who sent Mary Alice that note. Well, the private investigator shows up and he's like, "I traced the type of paper that the note was written on." and it was purchased at a paper store in your area, which means that it's probably one of your neighbors who sent the note. And I was like, I know it's Miss Huber's nosy ass. And then Paul is with Edie because Edie's a real estate agent and he's trying to sell his house. And he notices that the paper in Edie's like folder is the same exact paper that sent the note. And I'm like, oh shit. Maybe it does make more sense for it to be Edie than Mrs. Huber. Maybe Miss Huber was just a red herring after all, and I totally missed Edie. So Paul tells the private investigator, he's like, yo, I found Edie. Edie's got the paper. It's Edie. Private investigator, he's looking at the paper. He's like, yep, this is the perfect match. It's her. What do you want me to do about it? And Paul's like, I want you to kill her. And the private investigator is like, look, $5,000 she's hurt, $10,000 she's gone. Now, not to get off track here, but I did the inflation calculator for $10,000. So $10,000 back in 2004 is $17,000 today, 2025. So essentially for $17,000, you can just hire someone to kill your neighbor. That feels ridiculously cheap. You're telling me I can either buy a 2015 Honda Accord or I could pay someone to kill my neighbor. You're telling me that you could either buy 722 copies of Desperate Housewives Season 1 on DVD from bestbuy.com, or you could pay someone to kill your neighbor. You're telling me that you could either buy 200 signed photos of KJ Appa from Riverdale shirtless on eBay, or you could pay someone to kill your neighbor. Why didn't Paul think about how many shirtless signed photos of KJ Appa he could have had instead of hiring the private investigator to kill Edie? Maybe he should have thought that through. So next thing you know, this private investigator is out in the middle of nowhere with Edie because he's convinced Edie that he's like this real estate mogul and he wants to hire her to look at this property or something like that. He's about to pull out the gack and Edie's about to be deady, where she mentions that she steals the paper from Mrs. Huber. Bro, the private investigator does not kill Edie. The private investigator goes to Paul, says, hey, Edie says that she stole this paper from Mrs. Huber. And Paul's like, okay, don't kill Mrs. Huber. Don't do it. The guilt was already eating me alive that I paid you to kill Edie. Take the money and just go. But this is just a trick because Paul goes and confronts Mrs. Huber himself. He confronts her about sending the note, and Mrs. Huber says, and I quote, she deserves it for what she did to that poor baby. What the fuck? Okay, guys, so essentially what is happening is Mrs. Huber is all about blackmailing people. It's her favorite thing. She loves it. She was trying to blackmail Mary Alice, and the next thing you know, Mary Alice is dead. Mrs. Huber does not even seem to care. So then Paul kills Mrs. Huber. Insane stuff is happening in this neighborhood. Insane. So now I know what you're all thinking. Chase, is the mystery over? Is that it? We know who sent the note, and we know that the note is what caused Mary Alice to take her own life. So therefore, mystery solved. We know what happened to Mary Alice, right? Well, at first I thought the same thing, audience, that you just asked me. But what I have come to realize is that it seems like the note, this note from Mrs. Huber, is really just a small part of the big reveal. It's just a small section. It's a small reveal leading up to a bigger mystery at hand. Because the first hint that this isn't the big reveal is that it happens in episode 8. There are 23 episodes in this season of Desperate Housewives. You don't reveal the big mystery 8 episodes in. You just don't. Plus, the way that the mystery has been structured so far, it just kind of makes sense that this is the beginning of us finding out what happened to Mary Alice. Because we still have so many unanswered questions, and it would be ridiculous to think or to assume that all of these unanswered questions have nothing to do with the main plot line of what happened to Mary Alice. So let's talk about what Mrs. Huber said to Paul for what she did to that poor baby. I believe that this is in reference to what was buried in the chest underneath the pool. The chest that supposedly has human remains. And also, remember, what Mary Alice and Paul's son, Zach, did. Because remember, we talked about that in the last part. Zach said that his mom died because of something that he did. And we assumed that it was probably connected to that chest that was buried in their yard that had human remains, right? Well, in episode 6, Zach, he is sent to like a troubled teen mental hospital kind of psych ward. And we hear the doctor say that Zach has BPD, severe depression, and that Zach is just a deeply troubled young man. Now, some of those things are completely expected from a young teenage boy who just lost his mom the way that he did. But some of those issues could come from other traumas. And when the doctor tells Paul that he wants to treat Zach for repressed memories, Paul is like, no, that's so suspicious. Paul, why don't you want your son remembering his repressed memories? Does Paul not want his son to remember something that he did? So then Susan sneaks her daughter, Julie, into the mental hospital to visit Zach. And Zach tells her, and I quote, "After my mom died, I started to remember things from when I was little. What happened to Dana? Dana!" Immediately, my brain is running rampant on the inside of my head, like a mouse on a wheel. And my brain wants that cheese, brother. So who is Dana? Is Dana his sister? Is Dana a girl that lived in the neighborhood? And then that's when we see that Paul was having a garage sale to get rid of some stuff because he's trying to sell the house and move. And Susan ends up with a baby blanket that has the word Dana embroidered into it. Is it all starting to come together? Maybe. Because the 4 main ladies find this blanket, and after Susan's daughter went to talk to Zach and found out about Dana, they're like, oh shit, Dana was a baby. Then we add what Mrs. Huber said to Paul about what she did to that poor baby, and we're cooking. Now, my immediate thought is Dana was Paul and Mary Alice's second child, Zach's little sister. Zach accidentally causes Dana's death. But then there's a lot of questions here. Why would Mary Alice think that taking her own life would stop anyone from finding out what her son did? And we know that her son did it or something because we keep talking about Zach doing something that caused his mom's death. But then Mrs. Huber says the words, what she did to that poor baby, talking about Mary Alice. Wouldn't Mary Alice want to be alive to protect her son from this secret exposing and ruining his life potentially? Wouldn't she want to be there to try to solve this, to try to fix this for him? Everything's not lining up. It's like we're gaining more puzzle pieces, but it's just not quite working yet. Especially when you bring up all of the information that we learned about Mike in this batch of episodes and what he's doing. We knew that Mike was up to something because of the gun and the money. But we do get a lot of answers about him and what he's doing in these episodes. Starting with the appearance of a lady named Kendra. This is Kendra. Right before Mike and Susan are about to go on their first date, this woman shows up, Kendra. He has to cancel the date. He's like, so sorry, my friend is here. And Susan is like, oh yeah, she's just a friend. This very beautiful woman that's walking into your house and being like, I'm gonna go take a shower. She's just a friend. But we, the audience, learn that that's actually true. They are not romantically involved. Because we also learn that the guy that Mike met up with on the bench that time, that I thought was maybe like his boss as a cop, or like the mafia boss or something, that is this guy. Now I'm running out of room on the conspiracy board, so I'm just gonna hold his picture like this. I am the guy that Mike met with, and I am Kendra's father. Not me, not Chase. This guy, he's Kendra's father. Kendra's dad has hired Mike to investigate this particular neighborhood, this particular street, and try to find out what happened to his daughter, Kendra's sister. Now, immediately, like you're probably thinking right now, you're like, oh shit, is Dana Kendra's sister? This guy's daughter? But then how the fuck does that work if Dana was a baby? Plus, Mike takes Kendra to the location of where her sister was last seen alive, which was a bar called the Saddle Ranch. So unless the Saddle Ranch is just super chill with babies hanging out at their bar by themselves, I do not think that Dana is Kendra's sister. This seems to be a grown woman that we're talking about here, and Dana, from what we understand, is a baby. Kendra tells Mike, the guy who her father has hired to investigate her sister's disappearance. She tells him, and I quote, "Dad can't chase ghosts alone." Essentially, she's telling Mike that her dad needs to give up on this, stop spending money trying to find her sister, and if Mike will just tell him that this isn't what they're looking for, there's nothing here, maybe he'll stop. But I'm gonna be real. After everything I've seen in this 8 episodes, I think this old dude could be right. Maybe someone on this street did do something to his daughter. These people are crazy. But we'll get back to that. Let's keep talking about Mike. Susan accidentally discovers Mike's gun and cash. And before she can run away and act like she didn't see anything, Mr. Bean over here falls through the floor and is just stuck in between this guy's first and second story, just in the ceiling and the floor. I know that I have called her Mr. Bean several times in this video, but I cannot stress to you enough how much of a Mr. Bean this woman is. He catches her, obviously, because she's stuck, but he catches her having found all this money and gun. He gets really upset with her. He kicks her out. They're done. They're over. But then later on, Mike comes back to Susan. He's like, "Hey, baby, don't worry about it. That cash is just because I like to have cash at the house. And the gun is for protection. Now give me a kiss." And then they hook up. Now, I think realistically, the only reason that he decides to make up with Susan after this breach of trust, because she was in his house going through his things, is because he needs her, because she's kind of his into learning more about the people in the neighborhood, because he's trying to figure out what happened to Kendra's sister. But like, isn't this all just so interesting? We know that Mrs. Huber wrote the note that went to Mary Alice, and she said what she did to that poor baby. That's some baby named Dana, I guess. But then there's a woman or girl, I don't know how old she was when she went missing, who has gone missing, and someone on this street might be responsible. And then you just take some of the stuff that doesn't make any sense. Like, why would Mary Alice take her own life if her son was the one that did something wrong? Wouldn't she want to be there to try to help get him out of this situation? Or is Mary Alice involved with Kendra's sister's disappearance, and this Dana situation is something else entirely? Or previously we have locked in that Mrs. Huber was talking about something totally different in her note than what Mary Alice thought that she was talking about. Did Mary Alice kill Kendra's sister? And that is what Mary Alice thought that the note was about. But in reality, the note was about whatever happened to Dana. But we don't know what happened to Dana. We still are not clear on any of this, really. So then it's like, well, whose body is in that chest that was buried under the pool? Is it Dana's body? Is it Kendra's sister's body? Whose bodies is it? We got too many bodies. So until we start getting some answers to all of these questions, I do not feel comfortable calling this case closed. Or should I say, chase closed? Get it? Chase? Because my name is Chase and it's like case. Subscribe for more humor like that. Not to mention, we have not even begun to talk about what the fuck has been going on with Gabrielle, Lynette, and Bree. Where do I even start? Gabrielle has been cheating on her husband with John, the teenage boy. Now, that's bad enough as it is, but Carlos has brought his mother into town to keep an eye on Gabrielle to make sure that she's not cheating on him. Well, Gabrielle thinks that she manages to defeat her evil mother-in-law, even though I don't think her mother-in-law is evil at all. I think Gabrielle's the evil one. But she thinks that she has her defeated until her mother-in-law manages to get a picture on her phone of Gabrielle in bed with John, who I cannot stress this enough is under the age of 18. Carlos's mom gets the picture. She's like, "Ha, gotcha, bitch." Then she runs down the stairs, out the front door. She runs into the street. Boom, hit by a car. Now, we do not know if she's dead because she's in a coma, but we do know who ran her over. Bree's son. I tried to trick you into thinking it was Bree. It wasn't Bree. It's her son, Andrew. That's this kid right here. He's drunk, doesn't see her in the road, hits her, and then just keeps going home. Bree and her soon-to-be ex-husband, Rex the ex, they jump into action, and Bree seems to know exactly what to do to cover up her son's potential homicide. Vehicular manslaughter, if you will. She's like, okay, we're going to take the car to the rough part of town with the top down. someone is going to steal that car. They steal the car. We report it missing. Now, two things are either going to happen. The cops are either going to find that missing car or they're not going to find that missing car. If they find the missing car and they realize, oh, it's got the big dent on the front. Oh, I think this is the car that hit that Carlos dude's mom. Well, the car was stolen. Anybody could have ran over Carlos's mom. But the more likely of the two options is the cops are not able to find the stolen car, which means that they don't have to worry about it at all. She's kind of a genius for covering up this murder, potential murder. She's in a coma. It makes me wonder, how is she so good at this? Maybe she's covered up some other murders. Now, it's a whole thing with Bree's son, Andrew. He thinks that he get away with it. He's like, man, I'm off scot-free. And then Bree realizes that he's a spoiled brat, and she feels like maybe she made a mistake in covering this up for him instead of letting him face the consequences of his own actions. Because at one point she's like, do you even feel bad about what you did? And he's like, no, why should I feel bad? She shouldn't have been running out in the middle of the street like that. So he's a fucking asshole. And then so now there's this whole new storyline about Bree and her family covering up this potential murder. And then there's Gabrielle, who does not care if her mother-in-law is dead or alive. In fact, she probably prefers that she stay in the coma forever or dies because she has a picture of her sleeping with the teenage boy named John. And then there's Lynette. Now, the thing about Lynette is she doesn't really have that much going on that pertains to the rest of the storylines in the show. Like, she's kind of got this whole thing going on right now where she's addicted to her children's ADHD medication in order to try to get everything done that she's got to get done in the day. This, of course, leads to like a big meltdown. Her friends show up for her. She's going to be okay, I think. And there's just one thing that's very interesting is like each of the main characters, not Mary Alice, each of the main four women, they kind of bring their own vibe to the show. All of Susan's storylines feel like Gilmore Girls, where her and her daughter are working their way through wacky situations. Mostly romance with the grizzled guy that they know in their town. Right? Luke is what I'm trying to say. Then you have Lynette, and her whole thing is like Malcolm in the Middle. She's like the mom in Malcolm in the Middle, and she's got these crazy boys running around. That's her vibe. Gabrielle's stuff is more of like a soap opera-y thing. There's affairs, and then, mother-in-laws discovering the affairs, and then she gets put into a coma. And then you have Bree, and her storylines are kind of like Dexter, where she's like cold and calculated, almost sociopathic, but she's not sociopathic. What we know about Bree, the audience, is what not a lot of people know. She doesn't want anyone to see what's actually happening, which is her life is falling apart. Her husband is leaving her. Her children are the worst. Let's talk about her relationship with her husband. Things are falling apart. The first thing that Rex does, which is insulting to her, is that in therapy, he suggests that they have a sexual surrogate. So some lady that goes into the bedroom with them and like coaches them. Now, obviously, Bree storms out after that because it sounds like Rex just wants some lady in the room. Then something happens where I'm like, well, maybe Rex isn't just wanting another lady in the room, because there's some few strange moments here. It looks like they're going to fix their relationship, right? Like in one particular instance, Bree shows up to the hotel room where Rex is living, and she's wearing nothing but a trench coat. And, Rex seems very excited at first, and then there's like he puts his burrito down and it almost drops on the carpet, and Bree is like, "Well, hold on," and she like fixes the burrito so it doesn't spill on the carpet. And he's like, "You always do this. You can't just focus on me. You gotta focus on making sure that the carpet's clean." And it's like, well, first of all, dude, it's gross that you were gonna let a burrito fall on the floor. It takes 2 seconds for her to move the burrito, and then you were like, "Nope, the whole thing's ruined because you did that." It took like half a second. So then because of this instance, later on, Bree brings up this, and she brings up a good point. She's like, why was it such a big deal? Why? You always do this. You always come up with some sort of excuse for me having ruined the moment so that way we don't have to do anything. And what Bree says is she's like, this isn't about me at all. You have some sort of sexual secret. Just tell me what you want and I'll do it. He gets all weird. He acts like he's about to tell her what his sexual secret is, and then he goes, never mind, and he storms out. Then later on, he makes it very clear his son wants to come live with him, and he's like, I don't want you guys living with me. And I'm curious if maybe the reason he didn't want his kids staying with him is because of his sexual secret. And right off the bat, I'm like, okay, first theory off the dome, is Rex gay or bisexual? And him struggling with his sexuality, he's trying to figure out who he is as a person, and that's why he's having such a hard time, right? But then I was like, but then why did he want that sexual surrogate lady involved? I just don't know. It could have nothing to do with the main mystery, but I'm having to bring this stuff up because when they say the word sexual mystery, it says mystery in the name, so I have to talk about it. That's what this whole video is. So then I was like, well, maybe if this does directly correlate to our main story, which is what happened to Mary Alice, maybe his big sexual secret is that he was in love with Mary Alice. And after she died, he's like, I'm not having a good time. So there's a lot going on, and I'm sure we'll start getting some more answers soon. But for now, I need to lock in a theory for what I think happened to Mary Alice for this section. And I'm actually going to lock in a new theory. I'm beginning to think that Mary Alice's death was not self-inflicted. I think that she might have been murdered. And I think that she might have been murdered by the same person who killed the woman that Mike is looking for, Kendra's sister. Hear me out. This is my theory. Mike said that the missing woman was last seen at the Saddle Ranch bar. When we, the audience and the show, were at the Saddle Ranch bar, we saw Edie and Susan together. They were going to spy on Mike to see if he was really just friends with this Kendra lady. And that is where the private investigator that Paul had hired to kill Edie when he thought Edie was the one that sent the note, that is where the private investigator first made contact with Edie. He talks to her at the bar. This is where he tells her what he does for a living and that he would love her help on a project. That's how he convinces her to drive out in the middle of nowhere with him, where he was going to kill her. So then I'm like, well, what if this is where that private investigator also made contact with his previous two victims? The woman, Kendra's sister that Mike's looking for, and maybe even Mary Alice. So then the question goes, okay, well, if the private investigator, who we know you can pay $10,000 to and he'll kill somebody, which again feels ridiculously cheap, then the bigger question is, who hired him to kill Mary Alice? And I have an idea. It's going to be someone that we don't suspect, right? Someone that we don't expect that would hire a private investigator to kill Mary Alice. Someone that we, the audience, care about. Someone that we would be shocked to see do it. And I'm thinking Bree. Bree is a very likable character that we are rooting for, even though she definitely has her faults. However, because we, the audience, are seeing past those faults, we see her vulnerable side that she doesn't show to anyone else, we feel sympathy for her. We feel empathy for her. We are along on this journey. We want to watch her get her life back together. But even though we're rooting for her, because we know how much she cares, and she's not just some sociopath, we have seen moments where she jumped into action and covered up a murder that her son, well, I say murder, he hit someone with a car. She's in a coma. She could wake up. But she so easily knew what to do to take care of it. She went into action mode. She went into quote unquote sociopath mode where she didn't care about this woman, her friend's mother-in-law, who her son might have just killed. She just cared about one thing and one thing only, and that is protecting her family. And if another theory that we had, which was maybe Rex was sleeping with Mary Alice, maybe Bree found out about it, hired someone to kill Mary Alice so that she could keep her family, I think it was Bree. And that is what Rex's sexual secret is. He was in love with Mary Alice, and then the woman that he was sleeping with died. And then, yeah. I love this theory. I think we're really on to something. So, that being said, let's go watch the next few episodes. That's what I'm locking in, by the way. That's what I locked in. I locked in that Bree hired the private investigator to kill Mary Alice and maybe also Kendra's sister, the woman that Mike's looking for. That's what I'm locking in. Let's go watch some more episodes. I'm so jazzed right now, dude. This show is incredible. Usually when I do these videos and the shows aren't doing a great job with the mysteries, it makes it very difficult to like get excited and come up with theories and like really try to like look at all angles. But this show is so good, and it's really good at like giving you just enough clues to where it's like your brain's racing. You're like, oh my God, I think I know what's happening. And then of course you don't. because it's a well-written mystery. Okay, that's enough from me. Let's go watch the next few episodes.
Feeling desperate?
Of all people, you pick that tired piece of eating.
For an all-new Housewives
You're dating my wife.
I thought you said you were separated.
this Sunday,
You want me back?
the #1 news show returns
I am a professional model.
Can you swing a sword?
with new secrets,
You didn't tell him about
Your adultery? No.
new guilty pleasures,
You have the hots for our nanny.
and new dirt.
Martha's missing. We don't know if she's dead. They found the body.
An all-new Desperate Housewives, Sunday night, 8 Central, only on ABC.
I just watched episodes 9, 10, 11, and 12. And the biggest thing that we learned in this batch of episodes is the identity of the woman that Mike has been looking for. Her name is Deirdre. And the reason that Deirdre's father, who was this guy, hired Mike is not because he's some professional hitman, but because Mike used to date Deirdre before she went missing. Well, actually, I think it was a good bit before she went missing. Her dad says to Mike, and I quote, that he abandoned her and found a nice, safe wife. Whatever that means. Mike makes it very clear to Deirdre's dad that he is going to find what happened to her. And he is going to kill whoever hurt her. And this is what gets really wild, is Deirdre's dad then says, "You already killed for her once." So now I'm going to be up all night thinking about that. Who did Mike kill for this lady? Does it have something to do with how she disappeared or why she disappeared? It's all got to be connected somehow, right? Because why else would this show tell us that Mike has killed someone for Deirdre before if it's not important to the show? So that's pretty insane. We also get some pretty crazy stuff about Dana. Now, side note, I find it very interesting that both of our potential dead people, or at least missing people, both of their names are Deirdre and Dana. 2 D names. Is that a coincidence? In writing, typically, like what they tell you when you first get started writing stuff, whether it's TV or novels, is not to name any of your main characters starting with the same letter as each other. It's so that way the readers don't get confused. If you're reading a book and the 2 main characters' names are Tristan and Taylor, you could accidentally get them mixed up a lot because they're similar sounding names starting with a T. And this show does seem to follow that rule. I mean, it's not like it's just willy-nilly characters have the same name. It's like Bree, Susan, Mary Alice, Julie, Paul, Mike, Tom, Gabriella, Lynette, E, J, C, R. Like, the only ones that share the first letter of their names is Mike, Mary Alice, and I think that's it, right? Yeah. So it's like the show obviously abides by that rule, even if they didn't do it intentionally. It's just like, is it a coincidence that the 2 missing people or potentially dead people are both similar sounding names? Dana and Deirdre? Deirdre? Now I can't even. Anyway, we got some big news about Dana. In episode 9, we found out that the human remains in the chest, this is the chest that was buried underneath Paul and Mary Alice's pool. The show has been very heavy-handed in making us think that the human remains in that chest belonged to Dana, who is a baby for what we understand. And, you know, everything that we've seen so far, we are understanding that Zach accidentally killed his little sister Dana, right? And that's whose remains are in there. But then get this. In one of the scenes in this batch of episodes, we see the police talking about what was found in this chest. And they say it is adult female remains and that they were, quote unquote, all chopped up. So now I'm inclined to believe that the remains in the chest actually belong to Deirdre, who is the woman that Mike's looking for. So then what happened to Dana the baby? It's been made extremely clear so far that Zach accidentally killed the baby when he was little. I mean, we get a scene in these episodes where Zach straight up tells Julie, "My parents were yelling about me and Dana, and I went downstairs and they were cleaning blood. My mom put me on the bed and said it's not my fault. I killed my baby sister and they buried her to protect me." I mean, when I say it's heavily implied, I mean it's outright said that this is what happened. And it is heavily implied that this was the big secret that Mary Alice was afraid was going to get out when she received the note from Mrs. Huber. Which leads me to my theory of what I think happened. And we've discussed it in the last part, but now that we know even more information, I do feel like we're really onto something, which is the fact that Mrs. Huber, who, remember, before Paul killed her, she told him that his wife deserved to die because of what she did to that poor baby. That, to me, means that Mrs. Huber was working off bad information. She maybe thought that Mary Alice is the one who killed Dana. She didn't realize that it was Zach that accidentally killed Dana. So when Mrs. Huber wrote that note, sent it to Mary Alice sees it, thinks that it's about the woman she killed named Deirdre for some reason. Why did she kill a woman named Deirdre? I have no idea. But she doesn't realize that what Mrs. Huber's saying in the note is about Dana. So that is why she panics. So I do feel very good about that theory, but it's got one glaring missing piece, which is why in the world would Mary Alice kill a woman named Deirdre? And then why would her and her husband Paul chop up that body, put it in a toy chest, bury it under the pool? And then why in the world would Mary Alice, when it seems like this secret is going to be revealed, why would she not work with her husband who helped her cover this up? They were in it together, I assume, considering Paul knew about the whereabouts of the chest. Why would she take her own life instead of trying to solve the solution, which she seemed to have been doing before, right? I mean, it could be simpler than that. It could just be like a guilt-ridden thing, but I just feel like we're missing too many elements to just be like, yeah, she felt guilty. I feel like there's so much going on. I think we have a few options here. I have a few ideas of why Mary Alice would kill this woman named Deirdre. The first one is maybe Deirdre was sleeping with someone, particularly Paul, Mary Alice's husband. I'm sure that would make her upset enough to kill someone. Well then, Chase, how does that connect to the other major storyline, which is about Dana, the baby? How does that correlate? Well, here's my next idea. There's been a pretty big plot line in this batch of episodes with Lynette hiring a nanny to watch her kids, help her out so that she has some sort of freedom, some sort of free time. And the storyline between Lynette and the nanny, it wraps up fairly quickly. And it's almost one of those things where it's like, why was this even a part of the show? Unless it was very important that it implanted the idea of a nanny in our heads for a future reveal, right? In storytelling, everything is setups and payoffs. Just because something happens at the beginning of this season that we're like, what does this have to do with anything, does not mean it will not be paid off at the end with the big reveal. What if this Deirdre woman was working for Mary Alice as her nanny? She, since she was the nanny, would have known about both children, Zach and Dana. She knew that Zach killed his baby sister. So in order to protect her son, Zach, she killed Deirdre. And I feel like this is a good direction to start working in because we do not understand why Mike is looking in this particular neighborhood on this particular street for Deirdre when she was last seen at that bar, the Saddle Ranch or whatever. What ties Deirdre to this street in particular? Maybe it was the fact that her last employment before disappearing was as a nanny. But then there's the big flaw of, well, if they knew that she was a nanny for someone on the street, they would probably know who she was a nanny for, which would very quickly, be like, oh, well, Paul and Mary Alice then. Or maybe she wasn't a nanny. Maybe she lived on this street. Maybe she was married. We don't have any information about this Deirdre woman. Was she living alone and working for someone as a nanny? Potentially. And then I think about the quick nanny storyline with Lynette, and the nanny was staying at their house. So that kind of makes sense. I don't think a single person would be able to afford a house in that neighborhood. You would kind of need dual income. Although Susan does it, but I don't know. Or to take this in a different direction, what if Zach's repressed memory about him hurting his baby sister is actually wrong? What if the nanny, Deirdre, is the one that made the mistake and accidentally killed Dana? Then Mary Alice, in a fit of rage, killed Deirdre. Yeah, so a lot going on. That's the major stuff that happened in this batch of episodes, but we do get some crazy stuff that happens with the other storylines as well. Like John, 17-year-old boy. We did find out that he's 17. Not that it makes it any better. It's just we learned his age finally. I was kind of under the impression that he was 16. Anyway, I'll get to that in a second. John's mom finds out that John is sleeping with one of the housewives. So she starts following him around and sees him talking to Susan, aka Mr. Bean. And here's the whole thing about Susan, right? The only reason he's talking to Susan is because Susan had also found out that John was sleeping with Gabrielle, and she was furious at Gabrielle about it. She seemed more upset that she was cheating on her husband than the fact that she was cheating with a minor. But still, she was very upset with Gabrielle. That's why John came to go talk to Susan. John's mom sees him talking to Susan and thinks Susan is the one that he's sleeping with. So then she shows up to Susan, slaps her, tears up her dress. As she should. But Susan's like, what is happening? Puts two and two together because she's like, don't sleep with my underage son. So then Susan has to go to Gabrielle and be like, you got to go tell her that it's you and not me. She's going to tell everyone in the neighborhood I'm a pedophile. And Gabrielle's like, I don't think I could do that, Playboy. But of course, Gabrielle loves Susan. They are very good friends. She does the right thing, which is tells John's mom that it was actually her that was sleeping with her underage son. And John's mom is like, for how long? And Gabrielle's like, around a year. And she's like, so it started when he was 16. She was like, yeah. Gabrielle, I cannot stress to you guys enough how little she thinks that this is an issue. Anyway, John's mom, very upset. Gabrielle's like, oh no, she's going to call the cops on me. I'm going to go to jail over this. Sure enough, she's at the house later. Bunch of FBI agents and cops pull up at her house. She's like, here it is. She looks at her husband, Carlos. She goes, I love you. No matter what happens, I love you. Cops bust down the door. They arrest Carlos. They don't arrest her. Turns out Carlos had been shipping in items, like importing goods that were made with slave labor. So he goes to jail. Eventually he gets bail, and now he's on house arrest. And that is when we meet a brand new character in the neighborhood. I do not have room on the conspiracy wall, but just imagine an older white lady, and you probably are picturing the right image. Her name is Maisie Gibbons. She is one of the housewives in the neighborhood, and she has a side hustle where she is a lady of the night. And she has been sleeping with Bree's husband, Rex, for a while. And while we do not find out what Rex's sexual secret is, we do find out that he has been sleeping with Maisie because he is afraid of telling his wife what his sexual secret is and her rejecting him. So I don't know what kind of freaky stuff this man is into, but it must be pretty wild. Now, Bree finds out about this situation, Rex sleeping with Maisie, because Rex has a heart attack while he's with Maisie, and she's the one that takes him to the hospital. This is how Bree finds out about the situation. She's furious. She tells Rex that she's divorcing him. She's taking everything. She's taking all of his money. She's going scorched earth on him. Bree's son, who, if you remember, murdered Carlos's mom, potentially. She's still in the coma. He actually finds out what his dad did to his mom, and very upset with his dad. Actually, for the first time in this show, sides with his mom. And it's kind of a beautiful moment, I guess. I don't really know if it matters because Bree is still furious at her son for not feeling any remorse or guilt for potentially killing a woman. And so she plants weed in his locker at school to get him kicked off the swim team. Meanwhile, Susan is officially dating Mike, and it's going very well. And then there's Edie, which, by the way, we really like Edie. We feel bad for Edie. We find out that ever since she's moved into the neighborhood, she's been nothing but rejected and not included by any of the other housewives just because of the way that she looks. In fact, Mrs. Huber was the only one who ever talked to her or spent any time with her. And so because of that, Mrs. Huber was her best friend. So Edie is obviously taking Mrs. Huber's disappearance very harshly. And then when they find Mrs. Huber's body, she takes her death really hard as well. Now, since we're talking about Mrs. Huber, remember, Paul killed her and buried her body in the woods. Well, once Mrs. Huber had been gone for a while, finally, people were like, what? Where is she? What's happening? It became a big investigation. Paul gets worried that they're going to find her body soon. So he goes to the woods where he buried her, takes the bracelet off of her arm, and plants it in Mike's garage. It would appear that he is going to try and frame Mike for the murder of Mrs. Huber. It doesn't even sound like a real word. Sure enough, shortly after Mrs. Huber's body is found, everyone knows that it is a homicide. But the cops have not yet, as of this batch of episodes, found the planted evidence in Mike's garage. So we'll just have to see how that plays out. A big issue for Susan, however, is that Mrs. Huber kept a very detailed notebook about everything in her life. Everything she saw, everything she did, everything her neighbors did. Which means that when the cops go through these journals, they will probably see the part where she talks about Susan burning down Edie's house. So in order to get ahead of this, Susan has to tell Edie what she did, that she burnt down Edie's house. She's trying to suck up to Edie. She ends up telling her. Edie's pissed, as she should be. But she's like, I'm not going to tell the cops because then I might not get my insurance check because of all the investigation stuff, you know. And so in return, and this is kind of heartbreaking, it doesn't feel that, like, they don't make it seem that heartbreaking in the show, but it really is. In return for Susan burning down Edie's house, Edie just asks to be included more by the ladies in the neighborhood. Is that not heartbreaking? She was like, you know, maybe invite me to some of your poker games on Tuesdays. This poor woman just wants friends. It's so, oh man. Then there is Lynette, which honestly, it feels like everything that she does is entirely separate from the rest of the show. Like, she gets a nanny at one point, and then her husband accidentally sees the nanny naked in the middle of the night, and so the nanny has to go. At one point, Lynette has to shave her son's head because of her boys put gum all in his hair. So then everyone at her yoga place thinks that her son has cancer and starts giving her special treatment. So it's like Lynette has nothing to do with the main story of this show. What else is there to bring up? Bree, she has started dating the local pharmacist, George. I say dating. It's like they're kind of dating. Anyway, he gives her a gun as a present because she loves guns. She loves guns so much. She's like gun sexual. Long story short, the pharmacist dude, George, tries to kiss her while she's trying to teach him how to shoot the gun. He ends up shooting his toe off. One of the middle ones, not one of the important ones. He doesn't even care because he this is an insane sentence. He doesn't even care that his toe got shot off because one of the things he's always dreamed of is before he dies, he wants to kiss a pretty woman. And in the last scene of episode 12, we see George pulling up surveillance footage from the pharmacy where he is talking to Bree. Feels very stalkerish, very psycho, very crazy. He's a little freak, and I can only imagine how much worse it's going to get. Now, usually I don't bring up, I don't really bring up all the plot lines of stuff that has nothing to do with the rest of the show, except for Lynette, just because I feel bad that I haven't talked about Lynette. But I do bring up George for a very good reason, because when there's a show that has people dying in it, and there's like a mystery to it, and then you have like a little freak who's a stalker, kind of psychopath dude who just wants to kiss a pretty woman before he dies, I feel like he's a suspect automatically. Anyway, the theory that I am locking in for this section is that Mary Alice killed her nanny, Deirdre, to protect her son's secret, which is that he killed his baby sister, Dana. I feel very good about that theory, so let's keep watching the show and let's see if we can find out any more information.
Desperate Housewives cleaned up at the award ceremonies.
Wow.
2 Golden Globes and the People's Choice.
I'm dying to see what all the fuss is about.
Next Sunday at a special time, 10/9 Central, is your chance to see why. They'll be stressing.
Mommy's got a headache.
Confessing.
What did you tell him?
Everything.
And even
I don't want to lose you.
undressing.
I am not going to apologize for having a healthy sex life.
Desperate Housewives, next Sunday at a special time, 10/9 Central, only on ABC.
All right, chat. I might have fucked up. I just watched episodes 13, 14, 15, and 16, and a major plot point from really early in the season has come back, and I totally forgot about it, which is I forgot that we found out through the therapist's tapes that Mary Alice used to have a different name, Angela. She has 2 names. And I somehow forgot about this. And I think it's kind of detrimental, actually, because this is a pretty major piece of information that does affect my theories. Like the fact that the name Mary Alice, from what I understand, is a fake name. I mean, it implies, it implies that before Mary Alice even moved to this neighborhood where whatever happened, she had something to hide before that. My initial theory is like, okay, is she in witness protection, like the witness protection program? And she was given the name Mary Alice, and then her and her family like relocated. Maybe that's why Mary Alice had to kill Deirdre. If that's even something that happened, I'm not sure. Like, I feel like the easiest solution to this situation is like Deirdre figured out Mary Alice's secret identity as Angela and threatened to expose the secret. And then due to the witness protection part, they had to kill her. Maybe. Or maybe it's something entirely different because we get some major information in this batch of episodes, particularly about Dana. I thought we pretty much had the Dana situation figured out. Zach killed his little sister Dana. Boom, storyline resolved. But that is not the case. Because guess what, dude? Zach and Julie, remember that is Susan's daughter, Julie, they're kind of dating right now, right? They're going to be going to the dance together. Zach lets it slip to his father, Paul, that he told Julie about his memory of killing Dana. And so Paul, Zach's dad, goes and talks to Susan because he's afraid that Julie told Susan what Zach told Julie. Sure enough, Susan knows enough about it, not because Julie told her, but because she overheard part of a phone conversation. And so Susan, when Paul confronts her about this, like, do you know anything? She kind of plays into it because she's hoping that Paul is going to tell her. Kind of one of those like, of course I know what's going on, but just so I know that we're talking about the same thing, why don't you tell me what's going on? And we get this insane moment where Paul tells Susan, and I quote, "He didn't mean to kill Dana. He was practically a baby himself." Susan is like, "I totally understand. I'm so sorry about this. I won't tell anyone." That's a lie, because Susan immediately goes and tells all her friends. But the really crazy part that happens is after the dance, Paul is talking to Zach, and he tells Zach, "These things that you think you remember, they're not true. You didn't kill anyone. Dana is still alive." So now I don't know what the fuck is going on. Dana's alive? Then where is she? If she was a baby when Zach was like toddler age, then she would be like 14 now, 12 at the youngest. So she didn't just like up and move out of the house, just a baby with a suitcase, headed to the Big Apple to chase her dreams of being the Gerber baby. Like, what the fuck happened to this baby, dude? And then Zach says that he remembered seeing blood. And then, the whole thing where like his mom put him on the bed and was like, "It's not your fault." So now I'm like, okay, well, Zach saw something. Maybe he saw the murder of Deirdre and like his memories just got confused because also at some point his little sister disappeared. They absolutely have to be connected, right? Like that's just how things work. They have to be connected. Paul and Mary Alice's baby Dana disappears at the same exact time that this woman named Deirdre is killed and chopped up and put in a toy box. So now I'm thinking, okay, first thing that hits my brain, Paul had an affair with this Deirdre woman. They had a baby. That baby is Dana. Paul and Mary Alice are going to raise this baby as their own to avoid any scandal in the neighborhood. Because remember, a major theme of this show is about how these housewives do not want scandals in this neighborhood. They're so afraid of being judged by all the other ladies. But then Deirdre blackmails them and says, "I'm going to tell everyone that Dana is me and Paul's baby unless you pay big time." So they panic and kill Deirdre. And then they put Dana up for adoption. I don't know. That doesn't make much sense. Because then why would they need to put the baby up for adoption if Deirdre's dead and she can't tell the secret? And then the biggest element of all, which I keep forgetting, is how does this have anything to do with why Mary Alice had a different name, Angela? The mystery is really heating up. I can't stress to you guys enough how much I'm really enjoying this show. Things are closing in on Paul with all these secrets. Like Mrs. Huber's sister, this is her. This is Mrs. Huber's sister. She's in town, you know, taking care of the affairs of her deceased sister. I really don't have the room, but I just kind of snuck her in right there. Anyway, Mrs. Huber's sister sees a picture of Mary Alice in Paul's house and is like, oh yeah, that's Angela. I used to work with her back in Utah. And Paul's like, you must be mistaken, ma'am. We've never been to Utah. This is my wife, Mary Alice. But then in that episode, we see Paul put in a VHS tape from like a work party from back when they lived in Utah. Sure enough, Mrs. Huber's sister hanging out with Mary Alice, or Angela, as she knew her. And then there's this whole ordeal with Paul trying to get away with the murder of Mrs. Huber, which, it's an ordeal. He tried to frame Mike by putting the bracelet off of her wrist in his garage. Well, the cops never found that bracelet in Mike's garage, but you want to know who did? Lynette's kids. These kids, they're 6 years old. They're 8 tops. They're breaking into houses in the neighborhood and stealing stuff. And one of the things that they stole was the bracelet. So Lynette finds this because her kids have it, takes it to the other ladies and is like, guys, what is up with this? The ladies decide that they need to take it to the police. Now, when you combine that with the fact that Mike gets shot in this batch of episodes, he was breaking into a place where he was like searching for clues about Deirdre or whatever. There was an old man in there scared because someone just broke in and shot Mike in the stomach. Now, he does get it taken care of because he has a friend that like stitches him up. But then later, when he's at a Valentine's Day date at dinner with Susan, he accidentally tears his stitches and bleeds out there in the restaurant, has to go to the hospital. Then, you know, the cops come and question everyone with gunshot wounds that pop up at the ER. They're like, hey, man, what happened? Who shot you? And he's like, I shot myself accidentally. I was trying to clean my gun. It went off. I was so embarrassed. And they're like, okay, whatever. But then when the bracelet is turned into the police and it was like, yeah, my kids found it in Mike's garage. Now he's suspect numero uno for who killed Mrs. Huber. But here's the thing. Susan was with Mike the night that Mrs. Huber died, which means Susan is his alibi. She tells the police, couldn't have been him because we was hanging out, if you catch my drift. But then the cops tell Susan, they're like, hey, you know, Mike did 5.5 years for drug trafficking and homicide, right? She's like, what? Mike killed a guy? So she freaks out, breaks up with him. He's trying to explain to her what happened. She doesn't even want to hear it. She's done with him. He's a liar. Speaking of Mike, we see him meet up with Deirdre's dad again. And Deirdre's dad, his name is Noah. He's like, hey, Mike, don't worry about it. You're not going to go to jail. I'm mad rich. Rich people don't go to jail. So that's taken care of. Ooh, also, when Mike had his buddy stitch him up the first time when, you know, he got shot before he ripped his stitches, we get a little bit more information about Deirdre from the buddy. Mike tells his buddy, she rented a room over on Pine Avenue. So that does answer our question about whether she was living on this street or not. Turns out she was renting a place on a place called Pine Avenue, which is, from what I understand, not in this neighborhood. I do think that we might be onto something about her being Mary Alice's nanny or something. But what's even more interesting is what the guy who is stitching up Mike says to Mike. He says, and I quote, how could a girl from a good home end up so messed up? This gives us a big insight on Deirdre's character, because until we watched that line be said, we don't know anything about Deirdre. But now we know she's messed up. If I had to guess, most of these shows that I watch, these dramas or teen dramas that are kind of around a central mystery of a dead teenage girl or dead woman, most of them are heavily inspired by Twin Peaks, which makes me feel like Deirdre is going to be a Laura Palmer-esque character. Or, for my Pretty Little Liars fans, a Alison De Laurentiis-esque character. This woman is quote-unquote messed up. So, of course, everyone always writes her off as being the problem. Of course that girl disappeared. She was trouble. It's victim blaming, right? It's not like, oh, something bad happened to this person. Let's figure out who did that to her. It's, of course, something bad happened to her. she was so messed up. It was bound to happen. And that's a big thing. Like one of the central themes, if not the central theme of Desperate Housewives, is the fact that all of these quote unquote desperate housewives all have something to hide. They all have problems. Their lives are not perfect. They are all messed up. But the judgment and the gossip of the neighborhood and of the street and of the other housewives keep them locked up in a prison, like an emotional prison. So now that we know that Deirdre was messed up, it does give me ideas for forming theories on what could have happened to her. Which, and I think a good kind of parallel character would be the Edie character that we have gotten to know a lot more as the episodes go. She is judged and excluded by all of the perfect housewives because of how she dresses, and she sleeps with a lot of men. So if the parallel characters are Edie and Deirdre, kind of showing what happens when these housewives reject someone that they don't feel like conforms to their idea of the perfect housewife, then it's safe to say that maybe this Deirdre woman died because she was sleeping with one of the perfect housewives' husbands, because that happens a lot, apparently. And I do think that this theme is proven and really dug in with the theme of episode 16, which is all about Maisie Gibbons, if you remember, is the character who is essentially running a prostitution ring in the neighborhood. She was the one who was sleeping with Rex, Bree's husband. At the beginning of episode 16, she is arrested in front of the whole neighborhood in the front lawn, and she does not go quietly. It immediately becomes a huge scandal. And then, all of the neighbors, they're slut shaming Maisie. But what's very interesting is while they're shaming Maisie, all of their husbands were her clients. So while the shame is placed on Maisie until her black book of client names gets released, and now everyone knows who was paying Maisie. So who were the fools now? The husbands, particularly Rex. What I'm trying to say with all of this talk about the themes is that if Deirdre was seen as messed up, then it's very likely that the real blame could be placed on the husband that she was sleeping with, right? Maybe she was killed because she was sleeping with someone's husband instead of the husband being killed because he was cheating on his wife. I think that person could very well be Paul. However, we do learn that one of the housewives' husbands have a big secret, and that is Lynette's husband, Tom. He usually seems like the only normal husband in the neighborhood. I mean, he does abandon his wife all the time for work-related things, but just by comparison, by the insane stuff that these other husbands do, he seems very tame. Like, for example, Bree's husband, Rex, sleeping with Maisie Gibbons. Speaking of which, we figured out what his sexual secret was. He likes dominatrixes. I thought it was going to be really crazy, but But anyway, so Lynette figures out that her father-in-law, Tom's dad, is having an affair, cheating on Tom's mom. He's very upset about it. Tells Tom about it, thinking he's going to be devastated. He's like, yeah, no, I know. He's been doing this forever. It's just kind of like everybody's just kind of okay with it. And she's like, Tom, let me make something very clear. If you ever cheat on me, I will take everything from you, and I'll take these kids, and I'll murder you. She doesn't say that last part, but Tom is like, haha, of course. But then he goes downstairs, and he seems pretty depressed. His dad's like, what's wrong, buddy? And he's like, I did something bad that Lynette doesn't know about. And that's all we know at this point. And so I'm like, I always talk about how Lynette's storylines always feel worlds apart from the main storyline, but maybe this is how they all connect. Maybe we find out that Tom is the one who was sleeping with Deirdre. But then why would Mary Alice and Paul kill her and bury her in their yard? Unless they didn't kill her and they just offered to bury her in the yard. I don't know. It's still a work in progress. Here's some rapid fire things that happen in these episodes that doesn't really pertain to the main story. Susan accidentally stumbles upon Andrew, that's Bree's son. He's underwater at the pool party, fooling around with one of his buddies. She sees it and he's like, I'm not gay. Zach gives off even more creepy vibes. He gets picked on by Andrew and some of the other boys, and he tells Julie how easy it would be to shoot them, which scared her, and now she ran off. Not to mention that at one point, Susan tells Zach to stay away from Julie. He loses his mind and like throws furniture around in her house. It was crazy. There is something seriously off about that quirked up white boy. Edie is slowly becoming friends with the other 4 ladies. In fact, her and Susan sneak into Paul's house together to just try to look into what he's got going on because they suspect him of killing Mrs. Huber, which he did, so they're spot on. Last but not least, George, the pharmacist, which Bree was kind of dating, in order to try to steal Bree from Rex, he is messing with Rex's heart medication. He like pours out all the pills and replaces it with something else. So I think he's trying to kill Rex so that he can have Bree for himself. I don't know. But he is a psycho stalker kind of guy, is what I'm saying. He's a little freak. So what am I locking in for what I think happened to Mary Alice? The theory that I locked in last time doesn't really work because we found out that Dana is still alive. But there was a body buried in their backyard. So someone's dead. So I'm assuming that means that it has to be Deirdre. But what if it's not either of them? What if both Dana and Deirdre are alive? Deirdre. What if they're both alive and together? What if Deirdre has been raising Dana somewhere far away? Both of them starting a new life together. That would explain where the baby went if it's not dead. And it would explain, well, I mean, that's pretty much it. Because then the question is like, who's dead in the chest? Whose human remains is in this thing buried under their pool? So I've got a new theory, which is I'm beginning to wonder if everything has a very logical explanation. Like, you know, we thought Dana was dead. Dana's fine. Then we all think Deirdre's dead. Deirdre. But what if she's not dead either? And then it's like, well, then if everything's okay, then why did Mary Alice kill herself then? And then I'm like, well, what if the big reveal is just that she was depressed and she had issues? And because just like how these housewives on this street are all about being perfect and worried about gossiping and scandal, and they make everything seem like a bigger deal than it really is. These are just real world problems that they're all dealing with, and they're terrified of having other people know. Like when Lynette was addicted to her kid's ADHD medication because she felt like she was the only person in the neighborhood who was failing as a mother, who wasn't able to get everything done like all of the other housewives seemed to be able to. And then when she had her breakdown and she's talking to her friends are like, we have all gone through the same thing. This is very normal. You're going to be okay. Like, you're not the only one that is struggling. We all struggle. And I think that's kind of the theme, right? As we've talked about. And so what if, in relation with that theme, what actually happened was Mary Alice had problems and she struggled and she was too afraid to tell anyone about it because she didn't want to appear to be the only one that wasn't perfect. And so that's what happened. There's no big crazy scandal. There's no secret that the letter caused her to do that. It just happened. But then, of course, whose body's in that chest that was buried in their backyard, dude? I mean, there's got to be something. So I don't know. That's the theory that I'm locking in because I feel like it goes very well with the theme of the show. Like, you know, Gabrielle is broke and she doesn't want anyone else in the neighborhood to know that she's broke. Even though when Bree finds out, she helps her, you know? So yeah, that's what I'm locking in. And then maybe there's nobody in the thing. Maybe it was like a prank or something. I don't know. Let's go watch some more episodes and see if we can get some more information. Cool.
Next Sunday on an all-new Desperate Housewives. Truth
I would love you even if you were a murderer.
or dare?
If you hurt me again, I will kill you.
If you ever leave me for another man, I'll kill you.
Truth
If he's not gone in 5 minutes, I'm gonna go out there and tell him how old you really are.
or consequences?
I'm gonna do something so awful. It's going to rock her world.
Sounds like fun, doesn't it? An all-new Desperate Housewives. Next Sunday, 9/8 Central, only on ABC.
We are flying to the end of this season. And I think the mystery is all coming together. I just watched episodes 17, 18, 19, and 20. And the good news is, I think we're getting very close to figuring out what happened to Mary Alice, or should I call her Angela. The bad news is I have once again learned some information that would make our previous theory not work. So the cops visit Paul, right? And basically, they managed to track down the person who made the toy crate that the body was found in. And so they're just kind of going down the list of everyone in the area that had purchased said crate, Paul being one of them. So they go to question him about it, and Zach, his son, actually manages to step up and cover for him. He's like, oh, that thing? I remember that. We threw that out years ago. When I was a kid, I stepped on it, broke the lid. And the cops are like, oh, okay, cool, see ya. But then as the cops are leaving, Zach is like, hey, why are you asking about it? And the cops are like, man, we found a chopped up lady inside of it, dude. And they're like, all right, see ya, kid. So after that, Paul goes to his son, Zach, and he's like, okay, look, we need to talk. And Zach is like, you said that there was a man in that box. Excuse me? And Paul's like, no. I said that there was a private detective that came to take you away from us. I didn't say it was a man. And Zach's like, oh, okay, fair enough then. At this point, I'm just very confused. Why would a private detective try to take Zach away from Mary Alice and Paul? Did they kidnap him? Is Deirdre, who we are pretty sure is the woman in the crate, was she actually a private detective, or did Paul just make that up? Or, and here's the biggest thing, is like, it might not even be Deirdre in that crate. It might be someone else entirely. Well, actually, we do learn some more information about that. We'll get to that in a second. Mrs. Huber's sister, this lady, she's still around, and she sees Zach, and she's talking to Zach, and she goes, you know, I knew your mom. He's like, really? You knew my mom? She goes, yeah, I even know your original name, Dana. Zach is Dana. Dana is Zach. Oh my God. So now I'm like, okay, what about my witness protection theory? Does that make sense? Mary Alice had a different name, which was Angela. Zach had a different name, which was Dana. Maybe even Paul had a different name, like Duck Phillips or something like that. But then in episode 19, we officially find out that the body that is inside the toy chest that we have been talking about this entire season was Deirdre's body. The woman that Mike has been looking for this entire time has been buried under Mary Alice and Paul's concrete pool. And that is where she has been for the last 15 years. Now, Paul told his son Zach, aka Dana, that Deirdre was a private detective that came to take him away from them. Now, I personally don't believe that she's a private detective, and I think that we learn some more information that kind of solves all of these puzzle pieces. At least, I think. We get a flashback back to when Mrs. Huber was still alive, and she's talking to her sister. She's telling her sister that she used to work with, Mary Alice, Angela, and that she says that the two of them, her and Angela, aka Mary Alice, worked with a deranged young woman who had a baby boy. A year later, Angela and her husband disappeared, and that young woman's baby had also disappeared. Mrs. Huber is like, oh my God, are you telling me that they kidnapped that baby? But then her sister is like, I hope they kidnapped that baby. The mother was a drug addict. I'm glad that they saved that poor baby. So now, putting the pieces together, I think it kind of seems obvious what happened, right? This deranged drug addict mother is Deirdre. Mary Alice and Paul kidnapped her son, Dana, aka Zach, and at some point, Deirdre tracked them down and confronted them about kidnapping her son. So they killed Deirdre, chopped up her body, put it in the toy crate, and buried it under the pool because they didn't want to lose Zach. Mrs. Huber found out about this kidnapping from her sister, and that is why she sent the note to Mary Alice. I know what you did. It makes me sick. I'm going to tell. Mrs. Huber was just talking about them kidnapping Zach, but Mary Alice thought that that note was about her murdering Deirdre. I still haven't figured that out. You think that I would be able to, I have this problem a lot. I get a lot of my first Total Drama Island video, Can I Solve Total Drama Island? I kept calling Chris McLean Chris McLean. I hear the characters say these names in the show. You think I would be able to pronounce them. I also get a lot of flack for calling Spencer from Pretty Little Liars Spencer. Hey, baby, I'm from the South. Anyway, that's why Mrs. Huber says to Paul before he kills her that Mary Alice deserved to die for what she did to that poor baby. She's talking about kidnapping the baby. She has no clue that they killed a woman named Deirdre. And I mean, that kind of seems like mystery solved, right? And the only reason I'm kind of questioning it is because there's still 3 episodes left in this season. And I would be very surprised if the finale episode did not have some sort of big reveal. And I really don't even know what's left to learn. I feel like at this point, we have answered every single question that we have had throughout this season. Who is Dana? Who was Deirdre? Who was chopped up and put in the crate? Who did Mary Alice and Paul kill? Why did Mary Alice have 2 names? And of course, the mystery that we solved first, which is who sent the note to Mary Alice. And if you go all the way back to the first section of this video, episode 1, where I locked in my theory that Mrs. Huber sent the note thinking it wasn't that big of a deal, and then it turned out to be about something else that was a big deal to Mary Alice. I think I kind of nailed it, dude. I mean, obviously I didn't have all of the details. I just kind of had the formation of the idea, but I really did get the gist of it. So unless something extremely wild happens in the next 3 episodes, I think it's safe to say that we could put this bad boy in the Chase solved it category. But I don't want to get too cocky because there's still 3 episodes left. 3 episodes, plenty of time for me to look like a moron. Before we move on to the final 3 episodes of the season, let's do a quick rundown of some of the other stuff that has been happening in this chunk of episodes. Carlos's mom wakes up from her coma with just enough energy to try to tell the nurse that her daughter-in-law is cheating on her son. The nurse has headphones in, doesn't even hear it. Carlos's mom dies, which officially makes Zach a murderer. No, not Zach, Andrew. Zach is Dana. Speaking of Carlos, he is taking a plea deal, which would mean that he would go to 8 months in prison, basically so that way him and Gabrielle get to keep their house and I think a lot of their money. Now, this is pretty crazy. He's going to be going to jail for 8 months, and Gabrielle just found out that she's pregnant. Carlos purposely messed with her birth control because she didn't want to have a kid, but he did. So then Gabrielle ends up getting pregnant by John, the 17-year-old boy. Gabrielle and Carlos, they're the worst people. They're terrible people. Carlos gets physical with Gabrielle, hurts her. Obviously abusive considering he tampered with her birth control. But then, Gabrielle is having a baby potentially. She doesn't know who the father is yet, but I think it's very likely that is old Johnny boy down here who's 17. Paul knows that Susan is onto him, burns her kitchen down. Mike is on to Paul about being the one who killed Deirdre. So I can only imagine that that's going to get intense. Julie breaks up with Zach for being super creepy. He's pissed off and he has a shrine to Julie in his room. And then last but not least, Susan goes to a private detective to look into Paul and the whole Paul, Mary Alice, Zach situation, and actually goes to the same private detective that Paul had hired to kill Edie. So I can only imagine that that's going to get pretty crazy too. And I think that's it. We did learn the person that Mike killed was a cop. And then I guess because a while back, Deirdre's dad told him that he killed for her before. And so I'm guessing he killed that cop for Deirdre. We don't have answers on that yet. Guys, I'm feeling good. I'm feeling really good. I've never felt this good going into the last few episodes of a mystery. So let's go watch the next few episodes and find out if I solved Desperate Housewives before the reveal.
You beat up the wrong guy.
Next Sunday.
I am going to kill you!
The #1 show in America.
Stick it up my what?
Will end with the season's biggest shocker.
You did not.
The biggest cliffhanger.
We need to give it to the police.
And the biggest mystery will be solved.
I know what you did to her.
In the biggest finale of the season.
The best is yet to come.
Not everyone will survive. An all-new Desperate Housewives next Sunday, 9, 8 Central.
Well, everyone, I just watched episodes 21, 22, and 23. We have officially finished the first season of Desperate Housewives. We got pretty much all of our answers, and in the final moments of the finale, we got a cliffhanger that kind of sets up a big mystery for next season, I think. First things first, let's answer the title of this video. Did I solve Desperate Housewives before the reveal? I don't know. I'm going to let you guys decide. So we officially found out what happened. Here, I'm going to tell you what happened in case you didn't know. And then you guys can decide whether or not we think I solved it. Deirdre showed up to Paul and Mary Alice's home one night back in Utah. That's back when Mary Alice was called Angela. Deirdre was using heavy drugs. She was pretty messed up. She came to their house asking for money, and she told them that she would sell them their baby, or her baby, Dana. And Mary Alice did it. Mary Alice wasn't able to have children of her own. She really wanted one. They got all of the money that they kept in the house, gave it to her, and they bought her baby. At some point, Deirdre showed back up in the ER where Mary Alice worked and Mrs. Huber's sister. Deirdre had showed up from an overdose. And one of the things, Mrs. Huber's sister actually was like, where's her baby? She has a baby. And the cops were like, we didn't see any baby. And when Mary Alice heard that, or Angela heard that, she realized her and Paul and Dana, who is now Zach, needed to get out of there, needed to move far, far away. They moved to Wisteria Lane, changed their names from, from Angela to Mary Alice, Dana to Zach. Then a few years later, Deirdre shows up to their home, fully sober. She'd cleaned her life up and she wanted her baby back. And Deirdre made it pretty clear that she was here to get her baby back. She's not leaving without him. Mary Alice panicked, ends up stabbing Deirdre in the stomach. She then looked at Paul and she's like, we're going to bury her in the backyard because the concrete people are going to be putting in the pool tomorrow. We're going to bury her beneath that. Paul was an accomplice. It really seemed like Mary Alice took the lead on all of this and Paul just wanted to protect his wife and help cover this up. Then, of course, we know that Mrs. Huber found out about it. The kidnapping, not the killing, tried blackmailing Mary Alice with the note, and Mary Alice took her own life. And that is what happened to Mary Alice. Now, we had a lot of theories throughout this season. Witness protection program, Deirdre being a nanny who had an affair with Paul. We thought a baby had been killed at one point. All kinds of stuff. At no point did I really lock down all of the information that we know to be true now. But I do feel like I got very close. So it's up to you guys to decide whether or not I got this one right, whether I solved this one or not. It's not going to hurt my feelings if you say no, because there's always another one. I can always try again. Now, before we get to the end of the video, before we end the video, I'm going to tell you guys everything else that we learned from these last 3 episodes, mostly because, one, some of it's very interesting, and two, I know there's some sick freaks out there who watched this video without having ever seen Desperate Housewives, and I'm not just going to leave you guys hanging about what happened. So this is how everyone's season ended. We'll start with Mike. We did learn who he killed back in the day. It was self-defense. A cop had been forcing Deirdre to sleep with him in exchange for him not taking her to jail. And Mike found out about it, showed up. The cop pulled a gun trying to kill Mike. Mike wrestling him, trying to defend himself. They both go tumbling over the balcony. Mike was the only one who got up. When Mike figures out that Paul killed Deirdre, he goes and takes him out into the middle of the desert to kill him. Mrs. Huber's sister blackmailed Paul into leaving Zachary to live with her, and telling him to just run far away, never be seen again, and she won't go to the authorities. But then she went and told Mike everything that happened, and then told him where he can find Paul so that he can kill Paul. Paul tells Mike everything that happened while they're out in the desert, right before Mike's about to kill him. When Mike hears that Deirdre had a son, he goes, Deirdre had a son? And it was in that moment, and only that moment, that I realized, oh man, Mike might be Zach's biological father. That thought never even occurred to me. Mike does not kill Paul. He just kind of leaves him sitting there in the desert and walks off. And then here's the big issue / cliffhanger that the season ends on. Zach ends up beating the shit out of Mrs. Huber's sister with like a hockey stick, finds out the information that Mike had taken his dad out to the desert to kill him. So then he goes over to Mike's house with a gun, holds Susan hostage at gunpoint, waiting for Mike to get back home so that he can kill Mike. The episode ends with Mike walking into the house where Zach and Susan are with Zach's gun. Wild stuff. Speaking of wild stuff, remember how George the pharmacist, he was kind of dating Bree for a little bit, but then Bree got back with Rex, and then George was tampering with Rex's heart attack medication? Well, Rex has another heart attack and dies. And Rex actually sees his medical chart before he dies, and he realizes that someone had been essentially poisoning him. And he thinks that it's Bree who had been doing it to him. He has no clue that it was George the pharmacist tampering with his medication. He thinks his wife killed him. So Bree's husband is dead. Her world is flipped upside down. And the most pitiful part about all of this is Rex uses his final moments to write a note to his wife that says, "Bree, I understand and I forgive you." Dang, dude, this show that really hit hard. Like when I watched that, it hurt. Even though Rex wasn't a great dude, this show does a great job of making you fall in love with characters that are very flawed. They do terrible things all the time. And yet you can't help love them, but love them because they're human. Except for Gabrielle and Carlos. They just suck. Carlos is going to jail, but he ended up getting, he got put on trial again because he realized that Gabrielle was cheating on him, but he didn't realize it was John. He thought it was with John's roommate, who was their new gardener. So he goes and he beats up their new gardener. The cops show up because he broke house arrest to go beat up this kid. He's beating up this kid. The kid's like, "I didn't sleep with your wife. I'm gay." And this is the second time that Carlos had accidentally beat up a gay guy thinking that they were sleeping with his wife. So then he got put on trial for a hate crime, to which Gabrielle almost got him off. Like she was going to fix it for him. But then during the trial, John decides to walk up to Carlos's ear and be like, "I'm the one sleeping with your wife. That baby could be mine." So Carlos starts trying to beat up John in the courtroom in front of everybody. And just to clarify, Gabrielle did tell John that he might be the father, and that's why he did this. He wants to be the father. He wants to raise this kid that could be his. And Gabrielle had told him that as long as Carlos is in the picture, that's never going to happen because Carlos can actually provide for the baby. Lynette's husband, Tommy boy, quits his job because he didn't get a promotion because Lynette kind of told his boss not to give him that promotion. So he gets very upset with Lynette. He gets home and he says, "All right, I'm a stay-at-home dad now. You go back to work." And Lynette is not sure about that. That's what she wants. That's kind of been her arc this whole season, is about how much she loved work, how much she loved being that person, and how she kind of feels lost being just a stay-at-home mom. But now that she is given what she wants, which is to go back to work, she realizes she really wants to be home with her kids. So I imagine that's going to be a whole thing going into the next season. Some new neighbors showed up to the neighborhood. They seem kind of like they're hiding something because Edie is like, "I've never had someone buy a house over the phone without seeing it before." And they were like, "Yeah, well, we just really liked it." She's like, "Well, here, let me go in and show you where everything is so I can help you out." And they're like, No, you don't have to come inside." So it seems like they're hiding something. Seems like a season 2 thing. And yeah, I think that's it. Desperate Housewives season 1. I really, really loved watching this show. It's incredible. And if this video does well, and if there's even a mystery to be solved in season 2, I'll definitely be making a video on season 2 of Desperate Housewives in the future. My Patreon link is down below. All right. Dope.